Hey guys, and welcome back to another exciting episode of All About Me, where I'm better than you, and I know it. What is up, scrubs? I'm back in this video to talk about some important things when it comes to the Dragon Ball Super card game. This is going to be like a small series of videos, just about some strategy within the game itself. Some things for you to think about as a player, both offensively and defensively, so whether if it's your turn or the other person's turn. And a lot of this has to do with numbers, pluses, minuses, zeros, and really how to try and gauge the early game, mid game, and late game, and how to kind of give yourself a competitive advantage throughout the game. A lot of these series about this subject come from not only myself playing the game, but also talking to people. Like one of them was from Michael Joe Vogt, who taught me the importance of attacking someone else's battle cards. Which at first, playing the game, it just didn't seem that intuitive. It's like, oh, well, I'm going to get my opponent dead as fast as possible. Well, no, that's wrong. That's not how you want to play the game. You want to play the game where you can just create enough of an advantage of yourself over the course of the game in order to kind of snowball effect into you just gaining a bigger and bigger lead and then being able to close out the game kind of on your terms. So in order to start this, I think the first thing to do is to think about just the way the game starts. So each player starts with 6 cards in hand. So if you think about that, each person's at 6. If you win the die roll, you're forced to go first. So you skip your draw steps, so you're still at 6. You play an energy, you go to 5. At this point, you can play a 1-drop if you need to, or you can leave that open. A lot of times people opt to play a 1-drop no matter what, just because the force of habit, especially if you come from games like Magic. That's my dog. Come from games like Magic or any other games that are resource-based, you really think that you need to tap out every turn or use your energy of every single turn in order to play as best as possible. And that's not always the correct play. So especially if you're going first, if you don't have a 1-drop that replaces itself, so essentially, like if you don't have an energy boosted Majin Buu or a Broly Dawn on the Rampage or a Goku Kind Sun, and even if you play one of those that looks at the top 7 and you whiff, you're now effectively at 4 cards going into your opponent's hand. So you're going for 6 to 5 playing energy, 5 to 4 playing another card, and if you don't draw a card, you're sitting at 4 cards going to your opponent's turn, who on their turn, they're going to draw a card, they'll be at 7, they'll play an energy, go to 6, and if they play a 1-drop that replaces itself, they're now still at 6 to your 4, and a lot of times they're not going to attack you, because if they attack you, that's a free card for you. So a lot of times you find yourself struggling in the early game because you're making your plays too hastily, you're not holding back enough, and so you end up falling behind on cards, which comes into play huge. That's why a lot of times there's a strategy where people will try and lock you at 5 life and 5 or 6 life and try and prevent you from drawing those extra cards and wait until your hand is almost nothing in order to then make a play. So you have to treat the cards in your hand as like one of your most important resources. So in the video that Anthony Hernandez, yes, Anthony Hernandez made a video, am I right? He made a video called Resource Management. I think it was really cool to go over the video to see the energy, like how he uses his energy throughout the turn, whatever, but it was mostly just trying to be conservative on that turn, whereas instead of speaking about what cards in hand meant as a resource versus energy on the table. So I'm gonna go through stuff that may be a little bit deep, but so the way I've played any game is cards in hand. Cards are knowledge, knowledge is power. So everyone knows knowledge is power, knowledge is power, knowledge is knowledge. No, knowledge is power. But cards are knowledge. So the more cards you have, the more information you have. The more information you have, the better you can make a decision. The easier you can make a decision, and also more information that you have to play with and to think about whenever you're about to make a play on your turn. So in a game where you have hand size, and that's an important facet to it, unlike the Panini version of DBZ where it's basically you have 3 cards, 4 cards per turn per person, and then that's the max you can really get. In this game, hand sizes get really big. So if you can do anything to constrict your opponent's hand size, you're doing yourself a huge favor in your early game, mid game, and late game. So again, as I was saying before, cards are knowledge. So there's a lot of times where you'll have a board state of just a leader. Your opponent will have their leader, another character. They'll swing at their character at somebody, whatever. It's now tapped. A lot of times, often you'll see a player just swing directly at the leader on the other side, where no, they could just kill the battle card. And when you do that, you're doing a few things. Number one, if you have any triggers off of that, so if you've awakened, you're going to be drawing a card for free essentially, and you're killing a battle card without giving your opponent an extra card. And at the end of the day, this game is all about exchanging cards back and forth and trying to make sure at the end of the game you have more cards than your opponent so you can push through and combo out, which is the way a lot of the games go. A lot of games are really close. A lot of the games I've seen, whether if they're streamed, if they're on YouTube, it really comes down to who doesn't tap out and who has the most cards in hand that they can combo out with. So if we go back to, again, the way a game plays out, and we just look at turn one, if you're that person that's going first, playing an energy and playing a one drop that's not impacting the game or not giving you a card, you're now down 2 cards coming back into your turn. That's a huge disadvantage. So the things that I recommend in order to stop that, turn one, if you're on the play, so if you're playing first, if you don't have a one drop that's going to net you a card, I recommend playing an energy and passing and leaving that energy open. It could represent a few things. Your opponent could think it could represent a negate, you're going to negate their attack, or you're leaving energy open just in case you want a combo to go over the top. But it's going to essentially give your opponent less information about what you can do, and you're still holding 5 cards in your hand at the end of the turn. So that's one more piece of information that your opponent doesn't know. So going into your opponent's turn, they now have to think, oh, why didn't you make a play that turn? That's less information they have. And so now when you continue to play the game this way, you have to really wait until you get to card parity with your opponent to then begin to start trying to shift tempo a little bit more towards your favor. So over investing a little bit more, or starting to really pop your removal to kind of just kill your opponent's things. You really need to wait until you're card parity or heading on cards to begin to start to make these plays. Because there's a lot of times where sometimes we overextend as players, and on turn 2 we really want to play that objection. And I think that objection is bad on turn 2 on the play. That's when I think objection is a bad card, because if you just script your turns out, you'll notice yourself getting really low on cards really quickly, especially because an experienced player across from you isn't going to attack you and give you free cards. So whenever you're playing a leader that can't net you a card on your turn, so if you're not playing Vegeta, you're not playing Champa, or you're not playing Captain Ginyu, you really need to be conservative on turns 1 through 3, because again, you don't want to fall behind on cards if you're on the play. If you're on the draw though, not so bad. If you're on the draw, most of the time you'll end up staying at card parity with the opponent unless they are a leader that draws cards on their turn, which can make things really difficult for you if, again, you're not a leader that doesn't draw cards. So one of the main reasons why I like Gohan in this game is Gohan does a few things. His front side, some people can think it's underwhelming, but it's actually extremely powerful because your opponent has to attack you. They have to get their life total, make sure their life total is higher than yours, so you're not drawing cards on your turn. So they're going to end up giving you a card anyway. And then also, when you're attacking, they're going to have to spend their resources to stop you from taking a life from them and to stop you from being able to draw cards on your turn, which is another, again, we talked about, it's really important. Cards in this game are extremely important, and they're one of your main resources when it comes to winning the game. So Gohan's a perfect example of like a leader that's really balanced, like right where you want to be, that forces someone to come after you. So if you're a person that, like, say you struggle with this concept, like if what I'm explaining doesn't make a lot of sense, I highly recommend playing some games as the Gohan leader and trying to get a feel for this. And one of your main questions should always be for your opponent is, how many cards do you have in hand? How many cards do you have? You can ask that as many times as you want. I ask it frequently, and I keep track of it. It's one of the things I always check, and that's just a really important thing. So making sure you're keeping up on cards with your opponent and making sure you're at parity or ahead on cards. Those are two really big things. Now, in order to do this, we talked about one of the strategies before. One of the strategies before is letting your opponent get to 6 or 5 life and stop attacking the leader itself. So basically, force, like, either pass your turn or you're doing something else. So you're attacking your opponent's battle cards. That's one thing that I don't see a lot of people do in this game. I was at a local this past weekend, and that was one thing they just don't focus on. And so a lot of times you get this unique effect where, they're attacking, they're going all in with their battle cards. You're stopping them from, killing you or taking a lot of damage. Then on your turn, you're then killing each battle card one at a time, whether it be one of your own battle cards with your leader. And now you're getting that free value of killing something on your turn on their side of the board without them gaining a card. And so this ends up coming into play huge, as we said before, when your opponents start to realize that they're playing an energy and they're playing something every turn, and they want to tap out every turn, and they're trying to be really aggressive, and you just end up stalling them out completely because eventually they're going to run out of cards. And once this happens, you can then have yourself a huge lead in the game when it comes to cards in hand. Allow them to awaken, and you're not getting punished for it. So again, I can't stress this enough, that like this is a strategy you really need to start to learn, is how to keep track of the cards that you have, cards they have, and things like that. One of the other things that you can do to stay ahead on cards aside from attacking battle cards is just be conservative. So on your turns, make sure you're not overextending. So make sure you're not playing too many things on your turn. Narrow your plays down to an energy plus one card at the max. And then once you're awakened, this part's really important. Once you're awakened, make sure that if you have the opportunity to attack, again, a battle card, that you do, so you can draw the free card and net your opponent 0 cards in that exchange. So again, you're just trying to keep your opponent short on cards, yourself ahead on cards. So again, that's where pluses and minuses come into play. So if you script out the average turn, you start the game with 6 cards in hand, you -1 yourself to play an energy, you then put something into play, and it's 0. It's either a -1 or it's a 0 if it's netting you a card. And then you have to keep track of these numbers throughout the course of the game, and so you can really start to add things up. So as I talked about earlier, you also need to think about the idea that cards represent knowledge in this game. The way I've played a lot of games in my past, and I think of every game, like whether if it's a one-on-one against somebody or it's just me playing games by myself, I think of it as a puzzle. Like, how am I going to put this together with all the information I have available to me in order to get the win? And the deck that you build, the 50 card stack that you build in Super, that is all the pieces of the puzzle that you need to win the game. And in order for you to do that, you need to make sure that you have access to as much information as possible when it's on your opponent's turn or on your turn. And so this is where some key things come into play. Card knowledge. So you need to know what cards exist in the set. You need to know what your opponent could have, what you have, what cards you need to be worried about exchange for, things like that. So for instance, you should pay attention to what you're playing as energy and what your opponent is playing as energy. What you're playing as energy, it could be something like, if you're dropping, let's say I drop a 5-drop Princess Peach Vegeta as one of my energy, my opponent knows a few things. Number 1, I play multiple copies. Number 2, I potentially have one in hand, so I'm not too worried, or it's early enough in the game where they know I'm going to draw more. So again, that's information that you're giving away whenever you play an energy down. And the same thing for them. If they put yellow down on their first turn, again, that's information that you've just received. You know that you need to play around stuff like Crusher Ball, and if they have a Freeze's Army Leader, you need to play around Cold Bloodlust. So again, this is all information that you're taking in. So now, when we talk about cards equaling knowledge and you making sure you have as much knowledge as possible to make a decision throughout the game, and denying your opponent that information, you need to look at a few things. So again, let's think about when you're an awakened leader. My usual train of thought with my awakened leader is my turns are pretty well scripted. It's plain energy, and I will swing with my leader first before I make any plays. And that's one of the coolest things about the main phase in this game, is they allow you to do a lot of manipulation and allow you to get a lot of knowledge on your turns before you have to make a crucial decision. So I always swing with my leader first, whether it's netting my opponent a card or not. And the main reason why is because I want to see the next card. I want to see the next thing off the top of my deck. I want to see if it's that 4-drop energy boosted Beerus that I need to kill their threat that's on the table, or I need to see if it's that highly efficient 5-drop Super Saiyan Gotenks that's going to draw me a card on tap energy and allow me to make an additional play in the turn. I need to have this information before I can make the best play possible. And so seeing that and getting that extra card is huge. Same thing with people like with leaders like Ginyu or Vegeta, that even on their awakened side, they allow you to gain that extra piece of knowledge. it's so important when it comes to making decisions in this game to make sure you have all information readily available to you and that you can access it when you need it. I learned this playing Magic in the format Shadows of Innistrad, where they had clue tokens. And clue tokens are, you essentially pay 2 mana, sack a clue token, draw a card. And, watching the 2016 World Championships, and you see just how valuable those are over the course of the game. Like, they'll have enough energy or mana on the table to be able to crack one of those and then make a better decision because they saw the next card in their deck. They saw another piece of the puzzle. They saw more information, and so now that information is more. They have more access to it, and they have more decisions that they can make now. Whereas before they didn't have that. So if we take it back to Super, again, if I swing with my leader, I draw a card, and I find that Beerus I need to kill the threat that's on the board, that was 100% the best play. Whereas I've seen a lot of players, even myself when I first started, you tap all or the majority of your energy, you play the card, and then now if you draw a card off your leader, you're going to see the card that you needed, and you're going to be really upset because if you don't have a sense, you'll be untap some energy, or even if you do, you're now risking being tapped out going to your opponent's turn, which is a big no-no, especially in the later parts of the game, because that's how you lose the game. So cards are knowledge. Knowledge is power. The more cards you have available to you, the more information you have. The more information you have, the more decisions you have, and the more info you have to be able to back up those decisions and help you make better plays across the course of the game, especially when the game runs late. If we talk about denying your opponent that information, every single time you attack one of their battle cards opposed to their leader, you deny them a card, you deny them a piece of information. As the player's hand gets smaller and smaller, their decisions become minute. It's as small as, what am I playing for energy, and am I making this one play that I have the option to make. And when you start to play the game at this level, and you start to get your opponent's hand down, and you're starting to predict what their plays are going to be based off of what energy they're tapping, it becomes much easier to read their plays and much easier for you to react and for you to then take control of the game, because now you're ahead on cards, and more importantly, in all card games, you're playing with close to perfect knowledge of the game. And I can't stress enough this feeling, like, as a player, where you play a lot of times you play the game with high level of intuition, and a lot of decisions you make are all based on this. It's based on, like, what you think is going to happen a majority or a percentage of the time, or what you feel like is going to happen when that intuition hits you, and you're like, okay, I know that they have this card, they're going to play this card. But when you get to the point where your opponent's hand is limited and you're seeing what they tap every single turn, you can start to predict the plays, and you better react. And of course, larger hand size, much more information, much more knowledge, much more tools to be able to react to your opponent. That's going to set you up for long-term success in the course of a game and the course of a tournament. The number one rule for me when it comes to being successful at any card game is that when you play any game, you play it completely, you play it all the way through, because you never know what information you're going to cover throughout a game with the more cards you turn to draw versus the cards that your opponent can get stuck drawing. They end up behind on cards, or they end up making a tragic mistake. So you really just need to make sure you're playing every game through and relying on the deck that you build to provide you with that knowledge throughout the course of the game for you to make the best decisions possible. The next is when you're deck building, make sure your deck has plenty of outs. Make sure that you know all the outs in your deck, you know exactly what you need to draw, and you're making sure that you're increasing your win percentage off the course of the game by decisions you're making, by the cards you're drawing, and the information you're getting from those cards that you're drawing. There's a lot of words. But anyway, I hope this wasn't too deep, but I really just wanted to get this out there just to the community. It's kind of raw, fresh. I don't really like to script things in my videos. I'd rather them just be me talking. So any feedback is wonderful, especially if it didn't make any sense, please let me know. But some takeaways just from this talk that we had with one another. Cards are knowledge, knowledge is power. The more cards that I have available to me, the more information I have, the better decisions I can make, because that information I have is almost complete. Whereas if my opponent is short on cards, that's less knowledge they have, that's less decisions they can make, and less informed decisions that they can make throughout the course of a game. If your opponent taps out, you have a really big opening on your turn, And I really hate to see that spoiled by getting overzealous and trying to make your big play before you have complete information. So make sure that you're always trying to do whatever you can to draw the extra card. Make sure you're playing a leader that is going to suit your play style, but also not pigeonhole you into a strategy where you're having to be more conservative when you want to be more aggressive. If you're an aggressive player, play a deck like Vegeta, play a deck like Champa, play a deck like Ginyu. Give yourself that extra card on your turn, because it's going to help you, again, see these decisions better throughout the course of a game, whereas before you may have never seen them, or you've been playing a character that you really like because you really like the character, but you want to get better at the strategy of the game. So play these characters that give you that extra card so you can start to put that together. And when you're playing the game, think about this. Think about getting that extra piece of information and truly just dive in and see, like, wow, okay, like if I really get this extra piece, this really does make a difference. Like, this is huge. And for you guys that are more controlling players or more mid-range players, I truly recommend trying out Gohan for the reasons I gave earlier. Forcing your opponent to have to give you a card, or you being able to put yourself in a position to take a card every single turn, you're gonna really enjoy the knowledge that you pick up throughout the course of a game, and you're gonna really enjoy decisions that you're gonna make throughout the course of a game. So anyway, closing the video, cards are knowledge and knowledge is power. Hope you enjoyed it. If you want to subscribe, click the notification button, do all the things you got to do for YouTube to let you subscribe to the channel. That'd be awesome. Either way, I appreciate the time. And if you have any feedback, comments, concerns, or topics for the next video, you can put them in the comments. Or if you just want to shame me, you can do that as well. It's the internet. It's going to happen. Anyways, thanks, and I hope you get good, scrubs.